Hello, my name is Jeff Hoagland, and I am joined here by Kent Ketter, and we're going to be doing our constructed set review for Set 6, The Scars of War. Welcome to our review of the blood cards. We're going to kick right off with probably the bomb blood card in the set, the Bride of the Damned. She is a 3/3 lethal for 3 with the requirement of 1 blood threshold in the cost, and says whenever you gain a blood threshold, target opposing troop gets -1/-1 permanently. And then as long as you have 5 blood thresholds, whenever an opposing troop dies, you get to revert that troop and put it back into play under your control.
Yeah, I mean, screams Lookout Matriarch. I mean, just right from the templating and layout of the card, and I am excited to see how lethal is going to stack up. It's definitely a keyword that I don't think gets enough credit, but not having the more aggressively slanted charge.
Yeah, the floor on this card is really high because like 3/3 lethal, right? So like worst case scenario, this card is like
Perfect.
Trading up in combat a lot of the time. You block your opponents, Mama Yeti or Matriarch, like you mentioned, or Crusader too. Like you grab their Underworld Crusader or their Ardent Crusader. And the important thing to note here is that when she trades with something in combat, you're going to get the thing back that she traded with into play under your control. So that troop that might have generated value for your opponent is going to come back and generate some value for you.
And then it's also important to take a look at this ability where Matriarch's trigger +1/+1 on itself is, I mean, it is what it is. If they have a chump blocker or something with lethal, doesn't really have much relevance. But with this, it immediately is going to put a check on any, X1 centered strategies. And I think that in itself is going to be something that once you start generating, if you can generate that second blood a turn, that's going to really provide some sort of massive impact on the game. Start splitting damages, twin bolt style, or whatever we want to call it.
Yep. So must answer threat generates card advantage in 2 different directions. Probably going to be easily a staple in any deck that can produce 5 blood thresholds. We saw the Kaigalichu mid-range decks last season playing Might Singer of the Ages, even though they really didn't want to play that much wild, and they want to play a bunch of blood for like Hero Fall. So like this will easily be slotted into all of those decks, I think.
Yeah, and without Howling Brave, this is definitely something that I actually think with Howling Brave leaving the format, we're going to be looking at aggressive decks popping up more. And this is something I would want to have, in my 60 to start checking some of these other strategies.
All right, moving on to our next card here, we have, speaking of aggressive strategies, we have a cheap shot here. I think this card is excellent. It's one of the things that the blood strategies have really been missing to keep up with those aggressive strategies.
Yep.
This card, while not a permanent -1/-1, it lets you trade on resource efficiency with cards like Bolt Spasm, and it lets you trade up with some other cards that are larger X1s in the format.
And just to make sure I'm understanding, because we're looking at some new keywording here, conscript an Underworld troop with cost 1. How impactful are we expecting? Because this is something that is a theme.
Yeah, and it's a new mechanic too, so it can be kind of hard to evaluate. And
I have no clue.
The one thing you want to worry about, so if conscript, for those who aren't aware, what conscript means is the game's going to create a random underworld troop that has a cost of 1, and it's going to change the thresholds of that troop to be so they're the current thresholds that you have, so that card is playable for you. The floor on that ability is kind of low. So like there's some underworld troops that they're just like 0/1s or 1/1s or 1/2s or 2/1s just like without relevant text boxes. But what you have to remember is this card, in order to see play, the first line of text has to be reasonable. So as long as there's Bolt Spasms and X1 seeing play in the format, I think this card's going to be great. And when you occasionally like flip into a 2 or 3 power 1-drop, that's going to be all upside.
Yeah.
And at the very least, this is going to be like kill something, create a chump blocker.
I'm definitely interested to see where the middle part of this card comes in. How impactful we can see it be in combat and the like. And it kills Twilight Revenant.
Yeah.
This is my MVP.
Yeah.
Kill Twilight Revenant. Thank you, thank you.
And you know, with all the push blood diamond cards, like killing Twilight
Yes.
Revenant might be relevant in
Yes.
constructed soon.
Yes.
Another thing
looked
that's
through my
super relevant
collection, double
about,
digits.
you know, just a random one drop troop too is that this is an action that fuels scrounge for you, which is huge because
wow.
like when you're playing like Paw as you can and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you always want like a really high troop count in your deck.
Tons of
So this is an action that also gets to like count as a troop for your scrounge cards.
Imagine this hits just at like, I think you're ecstatic if this hits Killblade of the Milky Eye. That's still with us, right? Or
Naive Lackey. Yep.
Right,
the one drops we're playing anyways.
You hit either one of those and you are just like, you're losing your mind. And from there, there's other things that we can work with. So no more Howling Brave though. Think of that, what that would have been. Or
well,
what
remember
that
it's only Underworld troops. So Howling Brave wasn't Ardent.
Oh right. Oh, never was an option. You're right. That's actually good design choice. Wow, somebody was fantastic.
Moving on to our next guy after Cheap Shot is another troop. We have Crypt Curse Knight, which is a 2/1 with a minor socket that has the one-shot ability. When this deals combat damage to a champion, create a Crypt Curse Knight and put it into your hand. So
what are we looking at for? Well, this is a good time. What are the gems that we're going to be sticking with?
So I think the very obvious gem choice for this type of card is the minor diamond of wind, where when it attacks it gains flight. It kind of gives it a built-in evasion that is going to let it connect through to your opponent the first time. The thing that's important to remember, though, is that when a card gets generated randomly, like this is going to do, it creates a copy of itself. It's not creating a specific copy of itself as it's creating another instance. So the gem in the created version of itself is going to be a random minor gem that you meet thresholds for.
Ha!
So just because you put flight in this guy to start, or this woman, it looks female-esque in the picture there, doesn't mean the one that gets generated in your hand is going to also have flight. So while the first one, if we put flight in them, is going to be easily be able to generate a second copy, generating like the third and fourth copy might be a little bit tough, but I think that still makes this card worthwhile. Like basically getting 2/2/1s, one of which is guaranteed to fly on attacking, seems plenty reasonable.
And then you just look at it. There's probably some decks that, you know, what about having Crypt Curse Knight in like a 5 shard, or a 5 color deck.
Yep, I think at the very least, we're going to see this as one of the extra 10 troops that you need to meet the requirement for your Underworld Crusaders in your deck.
Roll the dice.
Yep, and not to mention, it also fills the necrotic rule, so the racial shards are still with us. So like you need, you know, to meet the 10 requirement for your Underworld Crusader, and you want a certain number of necrotics if you want to play that necrotic shard, even in just a 2 to 3 threshold deck. So I think this card's going to see some amount of play. Whether or not it's a 4 or just the 1 for Crusader will depend on the format, I think.
Oh, excited to see it. Excited to see the also the rarity on it.
Speaking of necrotics, our next card in Blood here is Deathseeker, and this card is just, I love designs like this. It's like, it reminds me of Blamsmith from the previous set, where like it's a card where you just like, you have this card on 1 and you're like, this is a fine card to play on 1, like I'm happy to have it in my opening hand, and like you draw this card on turn 9 or 10 and you're like, this is fine. You know, this was a card, this is still okay to draw here.
I think the question we'll have to answer, you know, in the first month or so of play, is how much of a cost is Scrounge 4 versus the other opportunities in your deck. I definitely agree that Deathseeker in some sort of very aggressively slanted, maybe Broodling generating deck will be absurdity levels, but Scrounge 4 compared to the Scrounge 3 on possibly
Paw as you can. Yep.
Yeah. You know, that's what I'm going to compare everything to, you know, with that wonderful Kaiju deck that we were touring around with. Scrounge 3 kill a creature it's kind of my baseline. I think that's a little high, but
yep,
I'm excited for the Scrounge 1 on it.
Definitely. And like I said, like, you know, cards like Cheap Shot that we looked at earlier, where if we have more accessible to troops, like maybe we can play some of each. But I think Deathseeker and Paw kind of pull towards 2 different kinds of decks. And like you said, in a more aggressive deck, I think this is probably a great use for Scrounge.
Yep. I I think some of the what is it? Sorry, this is evading me. The Broodling Shoku, the mono wild variants.
Yep.
I mean, something like Deathseeker and that just seems like you can actually get something with pressure down early where they're having to deal with.
And those decks are losing Oberon's Eulogy as their top end. That card's rotating out in standard, so they're going to need something to do with their Crypt.
Thankfully, this seems fantastic for it. Then we can get away from that. It's almost like they intended to take out a Graveyard Matters card to feed a Scrounge. Wait, what? Huh.
So,
no way.
So up next we have Malevolent. I'm not going to even pronounce it. Machinations. Look at that.
Machinations.
Malevolent Machinations here. So this card, again, when you look at cards like this that have like modes, you always want to look at the floor on them. And the floor on this one's real low. If the board is empty or you don't have a board and your opponent does, this card does stone nothing. So it does 2 damage to target opposing champion or troop, and that's important there. This card can dome your opponent in the face if you have a board for each Underworld race among troops you control. Gain health equal to the damage dealt this way.
Side board? That's what we refer to it in not the side deck.
The reserves,
please.
man. In the reserves.
Excuse me. Reserves.
But anyways, like this card, you know, the big thing that sticks out to me is this is the type of effect that like you don't generally expect to play around out of a deck that doesn't have Ruby in it. So like a blood-based aggressive deck, possibly powered by the Crusaders and something like Deathseeker, this card can like reach up and deal that last 2, 4, maybe even 6 points of damage if you've got the right things that have been generated on your side of the board.
What are the common? I mean, I right now we're probably looking at least 3 races. I mean, the picture shows you 3 pretty easy ones in.
Yep, I don't think it's completely unreasonable to get either Necrotic in Venin or Necrotic in Shin here. Working to get 3 of those is probably going to be a little bit of work, but I think like expecting this card to deal like 4 damage on average a lot of the time isn't unrealistic.
That seems fan. Remember, it's also gain 4, so we're looking at a 4, 8, or 12 point life swing.
Yep.
Off of a single card.
This is again, like if you're racing against the Ruby aggressive decks like this is a type of card that a non-Ruby aggressive deck really needs to be a contender in the format to not just be a strictly worse version of the Ruby deck. Like this is a type of effect that can really put you over the top in a lot of situations.
Actually, yeah. I while my initial read, I would like to say this is something I would look at for the reserves. That might be a conservative outlook on it. I think it might be better off. This might be a build around me type thing.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Especially with the build patterns, or kind of the building that's already encouraged by things like the Underworld Crusader. Slap a little speed on that one and see what happens.
Speaking of things that can enable different things for the malcontentions, there we have the Paw Gang as the next card we're looking at here in Blood, and this is one of our the gang or the duo if they're an Ardent. This is a dual race in a single card. So if you have this Paw Gang in play, he counts as a Necrotic and a Shin Hair for things that are counting your races. As for the Paw Gang itself, this is a 6-cost 6/6 for double blood threshold. So the rate's close there. 6 for 6/6 is kind of medium. But we have the text box here is the real winner. Sacrifice another troop to give this either flight or life drain. Important to note, neither of those mechanics stay until end of turn. So you throw away one of your dreadlings there, and this card's going to have flight permanently or life drain permanently. Pretty hard to race a 6/6 with life drain. And then more importantly, while you have 2 blood thresholds, if this is in your crypt, you can sacrifice a troop to put this into your hand. Who's excited to flip this into their crypt with Kaigulichu? I know I am. Not to mention.
Oh, you hero falled it? That's okay. That's fine. I'll get my 1 back again and again.
Not to mention, you put this card in your crypt. This gives you a really convenient way to sacrifice your Underworld Crusader on demand when you really need to like draw that answer or like hit that shard drop if this gets into your crypt via Kaigulichu. Like this card has really powerful synergy, and I think essentially like the Kaigulichu mid range decks, I think this is an easy shoe in for one of the 6 drops in that deck.
Yeah, I could see, even looking at a couple copies. But yeah, 100%. This will be one of the 6 drops. Ooze. I'm sorry, friend. I'm not you. The 6 drop. Yazukan.
Yep.
Your days might be numbered.
This card closes a lot faster than that one does, and it doesn't care too much about removal. So
no variance, less variance. Yazukan is a.
His floor is low sometimes.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. Oh, we know.
After our first gang, we have the primo removal action of the format. We have the Strangle, just super efficient, 2 costs, double blood threshold. Target troop gets -4/-4 this turn. This card has implications not only in the standard constructed format, but this is going to be an instant staple in the non-rotating immortal format. The blood decks have always kind of struggled to remove difficult threats like Elixir, the Deathless Gem, and other annoying invincible things.
Get out of here, Elixir.
Get them dead. That's what this card is very good. Important to note that this is a until end of turn effect, so this is not a permanent effect. So if you're not killing the thing, you might want to think twice about trying to strangle it.
And it kills Twilight Revenant.
Yes, it does. And it's only an uncommon.
I'm here to help. I'm here to help. This will be a common theme for me. We decided not to do a limited review, but I demanded to point out everything that kills Twilight Revenant. I think it's important for limited health.
All right.
Join me.
So this next card is a card that I've included in our constructed set review, but I wouldn't be like super surprised if this didn't see a ton of play. We have Underworld Oppression. It's a 5 cost, single blood threshold, basic action. Opposing troops get -1/-1 for each different Underworld race among troops you control this turn.
Yeah. Exactly in the same vein as, and darn, I didn't get to write down the Machinations. Yeah, in the same vein as Malevolent Machinations. I want to see where we're at for this. -2/-2, good shape. -3/-3,
insane. Yep.
Yeah.
If there's ever a world where you can consistently get this card to 4 and be like killing Crusaders on demand, like this card's definitely playable. But I think you're right that 2 or 3 is probably going to be where this card ends up.
Even in Underworld, where you could get 2 or 3, it doesn't just have to be a world. We could take an Underworld that does it as well. I'd be cool with that.
Yeah.
So,
and actually,
it might be a little oppressive.
One of the sweet things about Cheap Shot too is that Cheap Shot and other conscript cards that are just like playable and have conscript, they can like generate random races that you weren't playing anyways for cards like this.
Didn't have Shin here. Oh darn! I hit Naive Lackey. Oh wait.
Yep, and like the conscript can even generate like off threshold things that you can then play because conscript makes them on threshold for you.
I also think it's really important to see the importance of all of these are just doing opposing, so it's going to create some really large swings.
Yep.
If the Underworld, we'll just say the Underworld nation deck becomes a thing. I don't know what else to call it, but Underworld factions.
And because Kent hasn't said it yet, this is an uncommon and will kill an opposing Twilight Revenant with only a single Underworld troop in play.
We always close it out with Twilight. It's always the last thing, and this kills Twilight Revenant.
All right.
Actually, with anything.
So next up, we have the rounding out of our vampire clan. We always save the best for last. Behind every king is his queen, and the vampire queen is she lives up to the bloodline. I feel like she's doing something that's a little bit different than the other one. So the Vampire Queen is a 6 cost with double blood threshold requirement. That is a 3/3 with life drain and flight. And when she comes into play, she summons 2 vampire children. And we have your vampire child up on screen now. So
creepy.
This
Creep
card
factor 5,000.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, the fact that the vampires get pregnant in this Forthos is real strange. It does. Yeah. So, anywho, the floor on this card is always what you want to look at for cards like this. And this is at worst, a 6 cost that gives you 5 flying power that all have life drain and flight. That's super close to playable, and that's definitely playable in some formats. Even in higher powered formats, that's pretty reasonable, I feel like.
I hate to make the comparison, but we're looking at something in a realm of I'm trying to think of other things that I compare to that's a 3/3 with 2 1/1s, and just the impact of that spread of cards from this game. But in other games,
Green Paw Emancipator is real close. 5-drop, and those don't have flying.
No, nor life drain.
Yep.
Like
Like this is a 6-drop bomb that you are not embarrassed to play against the aggressive decks just because it stabilizes the board.
Attack for 4, gain like arguably 5 on the chump block.
Yep. And then, not to mention, let's talk about these vampire children here. Like, they are not just 1/1s with life drain and flight. So they have diligence, which for those who aren't aware, diligence is a new keyword in this set. Diligence means when this card readies, you get this effect. So after these vampire children have attacked, when they ready on the following turn, the children, they grow up. They're going to turn into either a vampire prince or princess at random. And, your prince is a 2/1 with life drain and flight that has, extra ability to gain some more life. Your princess is a 2/3 with life drain and flight still. So, like, this 6 cost that produced 5 power worth of flying life drain, guys, is up to 7 after a single attack.
So prince will produce, if it hits a shard, produces a shard that would deal damage equal to vampires in play, which would
correct.
Be 3.
Yep. Would be at least 3. Yep.
And then
Princess
holy smokes.
Yeah, Princess pressures their hand, but like they're both good. Like Princess has the better stats, but like Prince generating the blood shards that deal damage equal to the amount of vampires you control is huge.
I love the imagery of the vampire queen. I can just imagine her just standing there and basically like tossing the kids into the pool and just being like, "Here you go. We'll see it. We'll see you next week." And then you untap and it's a prince and a princess, and you're like, "This worked out nicely. This worked out well." Doesn't matter the combination of them, to be clear. If they untap, they're both way above rate.
Correct.
Doesn't matter.
Yep. You've now paid way too few resources. Like those were like at minimum 4 costs and minions. Mm-hmm. After the queen, we have some more vampire royalty here in the artwork. We have the Waltz of the Damned. This is, I would like to be upfront and say this is not a card I expect to see any sort of main deck play. I do expect this card to be reserved in all of the decks that are playing Underworld Crusader, though, and most of the decks that are playing Blood, because this card against other decks with Deathcry is huge. Like, your opponent has Crusaders in play, you're going to gain control of all the troops, and then you're going to sacrifice them, and you're going to get the Deathcry trigger on everything that they have.
So it's basically Extinction +3 for value.
Correct, yep. On some boards, it's just going to be Extinction for 3 more, and that's why I don't think this is main deck playable, but I think it's plenty reasonable in the matchups where you're expecting them to have things that generate value. Could you imagine taking their this kills Wrathwood Master Moss? I know that card's rotating, but like this answers that in Immortal as well, because like you get their 2/2 back. Just like all of their cards that are supposed to be good against you because you have a sweeper are bad against this card.
You also swing the entire... If I know one of the mirrors in the upcoming constructed format will be more or less based on scrounge equity.
Yep. And
if you have this, you completely swing the scrounge game long term. All of your things are mine over here. Thank you for playing. Seems fantastic.
This next card,
it kills Twilight Revenant.
It doesn't. Oh wait, it sacrifices, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yes, it does. It kills Twilight Revenant. Yes, it does. All right, so this next card is so fantastic, and I love that Hex could do things like this. Wow. Withering Gaze, so a 1-cost single blood threshold. Look at target opposing champion's hand, choose a revealed non-resource, non-troop card, and put it into your deck. The thresholds of that card become blood.
A++?
A++. So this is a card that you want to board in against Wintermoon. Mm-hmm. Like, you wanted your Withering Touches against Wintermoon, but, like, they just shuffle their good cards back in. Now, you, like, take the Psychic Ascension out of their hand, and you're like, no, it's my Psychic Ascension, you're never getting it back. Thank you for playing Dragon next time.
Nice win condition. Have a good day.
Yeah, like, this is really powerful.
Could this see... I know it's a stretch because the troop-centered, game that we play... Could this see main deck play in any amount?
I would be pretty surprised if the format swings out to a point where this sees main deck play. I think this is just going to be like an easy 2 or so copies in the reserves, depending on how control dense the format is.
Okay.
That being said, like the supplemental support Sapphire is getting in this set is not nothing. So I'd be willing to be wrong on that. This card not being main deckable.
The full format. Wow, blanking. The older format. I think this could see more play.
Immortal. Yep.
Immortal, excuse me. Yes, that's where I would. And I'm sorry if you already said that, but that's what I would want to see. Possibly main decking this in Immortal, just because the expanded card pool. There's got to be a higher occurrence of non-resource, non-troop type hands that you can feast on. Oof, looks good. Looks good.
Next up, we have Zentos Hunger here. So it's an additional cost to play this, sacrifice a troop, gain 4 health, and draw 2 cards. So the most important line of text on this card is it's quick.
Yep.
So you can sacrifice your things in response to removal. This is one of the cards I've included in here that I wouldn't be too surprised if it doesn't see constructed play, but I think it's like close enough in power level that's worth mentioning.
With that in mind, while constructed it might be fringe level, I could see it maybe in some mid-range mirrors and the like. Just to barely touch on it in the limited sense, this is probably going to be like above rate, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's fantastic and limited for sure. I'm thinking we mentioned earlier, being able to sack your Underworld Crusader on command. This makes your Crusader, you draw 4 cards and only loot and gain 2 life with this with a Crusader. A lot of those Crusader decks have Cottontail Explorer in them, just like a body that's already replaced itself that's just extra fodder laying around. So I feel like I wouldn't be super... Honestly, this could even be a sideboard card, because a lot of the time in those decks, the cards that you're boarding in to gain you life, you're cutting things that are generating card advantage against the aggressive decks. And this is a card that both gains you life and keeps your velocity moving forward, so you don't peter out at a high life total and flood out and die like happens sometimes when you board in too many Harvest Moons. That was the big problem last season for when we were playing. Every time I drew my 3rd Harvest Moon in a game, I felt like I couldn't win against the Ruby deck, which felt so weird because I'd gained 24 life, but at the same time I'd spent 3 cards just gaining life. So having something like this that does a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B is kind of what I'm looking for.
And we're already tied in against the aggressive Ruby strategies. There is not enough crush in those strategies that Zentos Hunger is not going to be able to still execute the chump block strategy that the Blood Wild decks are so fond of. Flood the board, chump it out until we can make our creatures larger, our troops larger, and then turn it around and take it over. Pretty excited for this one. So
our last blood card here is Zorath's Rectory here. It's a 2-cost single blood threshold constant. It has a subtype of layer. It has a major socket that says for 3 resources, summon a Dreadling. It gets all the socketed powers of this. I know I've got Kaigu on the brain, Blood Wild, everything, but this card, you put the major gem of Cultivation in here that gives you a permanent and temporary resource every time you attack, and you play this on 2, and on turn 3, you make a Dreadling that ramps you up to 4, and then the following turn, you can get up to 6, and just this card snowballs very quickly. This could be the card Horrors of War has been waiting for. Just an obnoxious card that it gives you something to do that doesn't die to Horrors of War, and it accelerates you to make your Horrors of War more terrifying.
Yeah, and if we weren't already needing some amount of constants in the reserve, or constant removal spells in the reserves, I think the Rectory decks, I'm excited for this, especially because of its ability to work in a control shell or a controlling type shell. Imagine if it's the choice between kill your creatures or kill your troops to stay at parity on board or ramp ahead. No removal. This card doesn't care about removal spells.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic card. Not only does it accelerate you, but it allows you to pressure removal dense opposing decks. This is a good card in a control mirror as well.
Yep. It will create in itself a snowball effect. I mean, yes, it's a bunch of clicking, but every time so what is it? For every Dreadling you create, you've created the ability to create
a third of a more Dreadling. Yep.
That seems pretty awesome. And then factor in the scrounge it can feed. This is one thing that will come up with this is it's just going to make Paw.
Yep. And actually, we talked about how hard is scrounge for. Maybe this fits into the deck with Deathseeker. This is it fuels infinite scrounge. And remember, you can re-scrounge Deathseeker every time you replay it. So if it dies and comes back to your hand, you could scrounge 1 and give it rage 1 again, and those rages stack, and that card's going to become very lethal very quickly.
And then from there, I'm this. It's hilarious that this is the last card, but this is the one that I'm actually most excited to build around, because I think this will allow for my personal favorite deck style to emerge, which is that the mid-range deck that can be both aggressive and controlling out of its reserves, by switching 10 cards. This screams both, kind of at the same time. And remember, aggressive is a mindset. In this case, all we're trying to do is exert as much pressure as possible. I will like to see, like I said, though, the amount of constants that are cards to control constants that'll pop up in sideboards or reserves.
At any rate, my name is Jeff Hoagland. I'm here with Kent Ketter. And remember, if you're looking to buy any Hex singles for Set 6 or any Hex singles for any of the sets as you're gearing up for your constructed formats, hexprimal.com. You can save 5% off of all of your orders there with code Jeff5. This has been our Blood constructed review for Scars of War. Be sure to stick around and check out the rest of our review here on YouTube. Thanks for hanging out, folks. We'll be right back.